So we are coming up on 1 o'clock, and I want to be respectful of your time and our presenters' time. And I want to make sure we have plenty of time for questions. So we're going to go ahead and get started. If you're just joining, please make sure that you put your name, your company, and your location in the chat so everybody can see where you're joining us from. And I want to remind everyone that this is being recorded, so please be mindful if you are showing your video of what you do on screen and of what you say in the chat, please. I'm Kellie Schmidt. I am proud to be your executive director for the Illinois Green Industry Association. And as I said in the chat, I'm in Springfield, Illinois, where there is lots of magic happening this week as the General Assembly is in their final day of the lame duck session. We do have people calling in from all over Illinois and even from other states, which I'm so happy about, because that means that there's a lot of interest in what we're doing to protect and grow the urban tree forest. And so for me and my role as part of this initiative, I fight to make sure that our members and our partners are included in this initiative, but I can't do that unless you're engaged in the project with me. And so I'm so thankful that you could make time today to be part of this. For the last few years during the winter, we've made an effort to bring you updates on the Chicago Region Trees Initiative. It usually happens during Invigorate You. We're not doing that this year for obvious reasons, but we've got a lot of great things to show you today. I'm going to ask you to hold your questions. Well, actually, type your questions, into the chat, and we're going to address them at the end. But don't be shy about putting them in there, and we're going to ask our presenters to address them at the end. Melissa, can you go ahead and advance one slide for me, please? We've got a lot of great updates to share about what's happened in the past year, but also what's coming. And for those of you who are just tuning into this project, we're going to ask Lydia Scott to just do a quick overview. So some of you have been involved in this for a while. We're not going to spend a lot of time with the details. I'm going to send a follow-up email to everyone who participated afterwards to share with you where you can go to get more information. We're going to focus the lion's share of our time on the projects that have received funding and the new initiatives that are coming. And we've really tried hard to tailor this presentation today to how it's specifically going to impact our nurseries, garden centers, and landscape professionals, and how you can get involved. And then I'm going to ask you for a couple of ways I specifically need your help. Our guest today, Melissa, if you could go ahead one slide, please. Our guest today, and the muscle behind the Chicago Region Trees Initiative, are Lydia Scott, the director of the Chicago Region Trees Initiative and the manager of the Community Trees Program, Melissa Kustik, the CRTI coordinator, and Trinity Pierce, the stewardship coordinator. They keep a lot of balls in the air for this project, so the fact that they could make time to have just a customized presentation for our audience is, we're really thankful for that. And so now I'm going to turn it over to Lydia for a quick overview of the initiative.
Thank you, Kellie. So many of you have heard our little spiel about CRTI before, and I was thinking earlier today, it's probably been a year since we were actually together talking with you all. So it's nice to be able to touch base and give you a little bit of an update. And it's my understanding you all have been very busy through this pandemic, which is a wonderful thing to hear. We're delighted to hear you all have been kept very busy. We've certainly had to regroup, and in some areas we've been busier, and in other areas we've been struggling. So it'll be great to be able to talk to you a little bit about that today. The Chicago Region Trees Initiative is a coalition of organizations primarily in the 7-county Chicago metro area. We go beyond our borders for many things, one of which is we provide the Urban and Community Forestry Assistance for IDNR through Mike Brunk's Urban and Community Forestry Program. So we're across the state providing those resources, and then we work across 4 states with the Oak Ecosystem Recovery Plan, which I'd be happy to talk with you about outside of this meeting that might be of importance or interest to some of you. But over the last few years, in 2019, we launched our master plan, which had taken a couple of years for us to develop. And we went across each of the counties and talked with stakeholders, got feedback and input from them about what they felt like the key goals should be for the Chicago region with respect to our urban trees. And these are the four key goals that were developed. One was to inspire people to value trees. Two is to increase the Chicago region's tree canopy. Third is to reduce threats to trees. And the fourth is to enhance oak ecosystems. Next slide, please, Melissa. And for each of those four goals, we have four outcomes. And for instance, when we inspiring people to value trees, one of the things we want to focus on are like messages around improved tree health, or if it's around increasing our Chicago region's tree canopy, that includes also improving urban forest policy, because that's very important. And so again, all of these four outcomes are for each of the four goals. So the third one is increased funding for urban forestry, and the fourth is integration of science. Our foundation is in the data that we've collected and the research that we are able to access to help inform increased improvements to our overall tree health and engagement of people. So it's important that we have each of these four outcomes in each of our goals. And I will tell you that over all of these goals is really looking at how improved tree health impacts quality of health for people as well as wildlife. So it's not just looking at how well our trees are doing, but why, and why is that important to all of us. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned earlier, what started CRTI off was in 2010, the U.S. Forest Service and the Arboretum completed a tree census. That was published in 2013, and CRTI was launched in 2014. And it gave us some really great information about the composition of our forest, the number of trees that we have, where they're located, that kind of thing. We've just completed the 2020 tree census that was also done for the 7-county Chicago metro area with an intensive focus in the city of Chicago because of the population density there. And then we have new LiDAR imagery that's been flown by 6 of the 7 counties that is now being analyzed, similar to what we had done last time. And the reason that these two pieces of data sets are important, that they work in tandem, is that the LiDAR imagery enables us to be able to zoom in on specific parcels or census tracts or communities so that we can give site-specific information, where the census enables us to understand how is our composition changed, what are we seeing with respect to invasive species, what is our potential for risk, those kinds of things. So it's important that we look at those two data sets in tandem. Next slide, please. We've taken the data, and many of you have seen these maps before, but for those of you that haven't, we've incorporated our tree data in combination with the US Census data. So for the maps that are currently up, because we're just getting our new data in, this will be 2010 data, so it'll be US Census data. And we're looking at flooding potential impacts to vulnerable populations, heat and air quality, in addition to canopy cover. And that's for the map on the right-hand side. So if you go to crti.org and put in priority map or story map in the search box, it'll take you to our priority data set. And the first thing it'll do is it'll show you each of those layers: air quality, vulnerable populations, flooding, and heat, and canopy cover as separate layers. And then it'll combine those layers so that we can begin to look at where can we have the greatest impact. And then we have a separate heat map that is the map that's shown on the left-hand side. And the reason that that's important is we know that where we have canopy, we have reduced temperatures. And we've seen with our data that we'll see as much as a 10 to 12 degree difference in temperature based on where the canopy is and what percentage of impervious surface we're seeing in communities. And so it's a tool that we use when we communicate with communities and landowners and managers across the region to identify these are areas where we really need to increase our canopy. And overall, why that's really important is understanding where can trees have the most impact and create the most benefit. And it's another way for us to say, this is an important investment for your community, and this is where your investment can be most impactful. Next slide, please. So one of the things that we've done, as you know, in addition to one of the things that was brought up in our master plan, was the need to engage the private sector in helping us with our urban forests. So Kelly, when she was talking in the introduction, said that, you know, we've been able to get funding for a number of projects, and most of our funding has typically come from federal or state sources. So we are pretty good at getting federal dollars. We get Great Lakes Restoration Initiative grants on a pretty regular basis. This year we got 2, which is about $400,000 worth of projects. The most of that money does not come to us. We get a very small percentage, often about 10%, to administer the project. Our goal is to get that money spent on getting trees in the ground. And so we have a couple of projects that will be coming up next year, well, this year as well as next year. And then we have 2 GLRIs right now that we have one in Lake County and one in Cook County that is providing significant planting of trees across those 2 counties. And then we have the IDNR grants that we get. And this year, the state urban forestry coordinator, instead of allocating the funding for planting, which we have done for the last several years, has allocated that funding for inventories and management plans. And the reason behind that is that the federal dollars that come to the state are based on the number of communities that have inventories and management plans based on those inventories. So he's working to build our capacity to get more funding coming to the state. So that's typically where I think last year we had maybe 20 communities that got funding for tree planting across the state, where this year that funding is going for inventories and management plans. So one of the things that we're focusing on now, we'll continue to do that, going after funding for federal and state dollars to build and expand tree planting. But we need to be expanding our connection to corporate and private partnership opportunities. And so we were successful in getting a grant from the Walder Foundation to hire an individual who can work with us to engage corporations. And so what we've done is we've identified, we're building a database of corporations in our area. And if you have connections to any corporations, we would love to get those. And identifying what their sustainability goals are. So what are their environmental interests? Are they interested in youth engagement? Are they interested in community, supporting the community that their corporation is in? Are they interested in carbon credits? And then once we identify what their sustainability goals are, then we've been building also a bank of projects. So our partners have been submitting to us projects that they are looking for funding for. So for instance, we have a couple of projects right now that we're searching for funding for. One is a project on the south side of Chicago. It's called the 92nd and Buffalo project. It's renovation of a brownfield site where MWRD, the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District, is putting underground stormwater storage under the park, and then above ground they're putting in a natural play area, community gardens, trees and shrubs, and it's access to the Calumet River. And so that's a really great project for a corporation to be involved in, because it hits a lot of the bells and whistles that we hear about, especially post Black Lives Matter. You know, there more corporations have sort of shifted and are starting to think about how can we better serve communities of color? How can we better serve under-resourced communities? What are those focus areas that we can direct our resources to help make a difference? And so as we work to build that program out, one of the things that we're focused on is certainly engaging the corporations, but providing opportunities for them across their specific corporate needs. One of them is identifying opportunities for carbon projects. So we're working with the City Forest Credits. It's a not-for-profit organization out of Seattle. They're a national organization, and they're helping us build, thank you, Melissa. They're helping us build a program, an aggregated program here in the Chicago region, where we can get landowners into projects, get their projects into carbon-based credits. So for instance, if a municipality, say like a Schaumburg or a Naperville, plants over 1,000 trees a year, then we can get them into an aggregation program where we can couple them up with others. So those are for larger size planting projects. Then we work with an aggregator who can then get those into certification for carbon credits and then get those on the carbon market, which means that there's revenue coming back to support these communities to increase their planting and their tree care. We're working not just with urban and traditional urban forestry programs, but also with the forest preserves on this. So for instance, we have a project in Kendall County where they planted 30,000 trees. And for most of you, those would be those little tiny conservation sized trees. So they're not typically what you would be selling. But those can get into the carbon market and then come back and fund conservation work on their properties. The other type of carbon work that we're doing, we got another grant from the Lumpkin Family Foundation, and it's looking at how we can aggregate smaller projects. And this is where we see a broader impact in that for communities that don't plant 1,000 trees a year, which most of them do not, can we aggregate those smaller projects into one and be able to get them into the carbon market and get revenues coming back to them as well. So that's a project that we're currently working on, also with city forest credits, as well as Trees Forever. And we will be testing that in smaller communities towards the end of the year. Next slide, please. Tree supply is another thing that we've been funded through this grant that we got from the Walder Family Foundation. And many of you may have seen this. I know Kellie sent the RFP out last year. In October, we awarded 2 contracts for contract growing, where we're paying 1/5 of the contract amount each year for 5 years and taking delivery of the trees in 2025. And the goal there is to get those trees in production so that we can get the species we want and get them when we need them. And our intention is to be able to add a new contract or 2 contracts every year so that we're getting into a regular cycle where at the end of 5 years, we still have every year a full contract coming through for us so that we're building on that each year. COVID this year has created some downs in the volunteer projects that we've been able to lead, which often are the sources of funding for our tree bank. And so we are struggling right now to get enough money to do 2 more contracts for this year, but that's still our goal. And our corporate sustainability partnership program manager, which is a mouthful, I know, is actively seeking support to be able to get that implemented again this next year. However, we do have the funding to continue through all 5 years of payments for that. And our goal is to, again, as I mentioned, have contracts rolling so that we have 2 contracts every year ongoing. So I think that's it for my slides. Melissa, let's see what the next slide is, just in case. Yes, it is. It's Melissa's slide. So what I just wanted to say in summary is that we've got a number of things that we're working on. Obviously for us, our goal is to increase tree planting and care. So in everything we do, we're focused on trying to get more trees in the ground and get them cared for correctly so that they can live longer and provide more benefits. So it's really critical that we have a good relationship with you all at the Green Industry Association so that we can find out what the challenges and the obstacles are that we should be addressing and how we can better work together so that we can identify what our long-term needs are. And I know in the past when we've spoken to you, there's always 1 or 2 of you that say, you need to tell us exactly what species of trees we should be growing and how many. But you can see that as the projects evolve and we continue to work through this process, we're learning what our opportunity areas are. And every year we're better able to provide advice and direction on what we see the trends are. And Trinity's going to be able to talk a little bit more about that as she's been more actively engaged in our planting projects. But overall, what we need you all to understand is that we're a coalition of organizations. So it's not just our little team that's talking to you today. It's all the partners that we work with, all the communities, all the not-for-profit organizations, the federal and state agencies that we're trying to push along to increase tree planting and care in order to improve our quality of life. So Melissa, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thanks, Lydia. All right, so Lydia mentioned that we had 4 overarching goals in our master plan. And one of them that it might seem kind of like a loose goal, which is just inspiring people to value trees, is actually the most critical for building our foundation. Because once you have people behind you and supporters, it's a lot easier to get work done. And that's whether you have a tree champion in your community pushing to get things done, or just teams of volunteers who go out every day and, fix the mulch on trees or water the ones in front of their house. So inspiring people is critical to our overall mission. And so within the goal of inspiring people to value trees, there are actually 3 strategies that were identified in the master plan for how we can accomplish inspiring people, which again, you have to have a plan in place. Otherwise it's sort of a big lofty thing. So we take off bite-sized chunks. So 3 of the strategies that were agreed to were to equip partners with key messages to describe CRTI, its goals, and their involvement. And I want to point out here the word partners. There is no application process. This is not an official status where you have to ask for it and then receive it. This is partners are anybody who are working on trees or care about trees. It's pretty much everybody who, it is everybody who is participating in this webinar right now. So if you care about trees, if you do anything that touches trees or affects them, you are a partner. And so we want to make sure that we're all speaking together to share what it is we want to happen with the trees in our communities, make them healthier and stronger, diversified. And so one of our strategies was to make sure that we're all speaking the same way to have the biggest impact and to be the most effective in getting these messages out. The second strategy was to develop a communication strategy that's focused on the homeowner audience. So Lydia mentioned the tree census that happened in 2010, looking at trees across the 7-county region. And one of the interesting takeaways from that is that 70% of trees are on private property. So if we want to have a positive effect on the trees overall in this region, we really need to include the homeowners in our planning and get them on board and share resources with them. So strategy 2 was to target that audience in particular. The third strategy was to shape a partner launch of CRTI. So the Chicago Region Trees Initiative officially launched in 2014, but a lot of the work that's been done so far has been internal. It has been providing resources to arborists and municipalities and sort of building momentum on the inside. But because so many trees are on private property, this is really the year where we need to have a big public launch and make sure that we are spreading public awareness of what the challenges are to the urban forest, but also what people can do to improve the trees and forests around them. It also gives us a chance to celebrate the work that's already been done by all of our partners, and then to get more interest growing. So we're building that momentum now on a bigger scale. So now I'm just going to go over a few examples of ways that we have tackled these 3 strategies. The first one is with our Healthy series. This is a really interesting campaign. So again, referencing that 2010 tree census, I mentioned that 70% of trees are on private property, but in looking at the species composition on private property, the #1 tree was buckthorn. And even looking on the bigger scale of all trees in the 7-county region, 28% of them were buckthorn. So right there, we have a pretty big risk to trees and to healthy forests, which is invasive woody species. And by the way, honeysuckle also, I think it made up 3% of all the trees. So between those 2, we had a big problem. And so in getting our partners all to speak with one message and to get it all incorporated, if you look at the bottom, I don't know if you can see my mouse, but along the bottom of this Healthy Hedges piece, there's quite a few logos. So we had several partners working together from the natural areas, from the commercial side, to say, what are these messages that we want to get across? And what it came down to was, we can't just say, buckthorn is bad, get it out of your yards. It has to be a positive message and an exciting message, which is, maybe this buckthorn hedge is here because you want some privacy from your neighbors, but imagine what it could be if you pulled that out and replaced it with flowering shrubs or maybe things that bring in pollinators. So it's really an opportunity to improve your landscaping. And so this Healthy brochure series, there's Healthy Hedges, Healthy Homes, and Healthy Habitats. They are tools that can be shared with homeowners. And in particular, they can be pieces that retail garden centers can share with their customers, or that landscape architects can share with their customers to say, here's what the vision for your yard could be. And so again, it's inspiring people, but it's also giving them some practical information. I do want to point out on the bottom right of the slide, if you go to chicagorti.org/healthy-brochure-series, you can find all 3 of them except Healthy Habitats, which is coming out soon. Healthy Hedges really targets those hedges and screens. Healthy Homes is more about how to manage your own yard in a way that's sustainable. So it's a more bigger scale besides just the hedges. And Healthy Habitats will be for even bigger scale from land managers. So check these out. Our Plant Trees campaign is very exciting. This is one that's meant, this is part of our communication strategy to reach the goal. So this is the one that's targeting the homeowner audience. And so I want to point out that there's a lot of work that came before this. It's things like collecting research on how our partners reach out to their own constituents. And we created a message map that ties together all of the key messages that our partners use when they're trying to explain why trees are important and why people should care about them and what they can do. So if you haven't seen a message map, it's like a really cool spider web that's also a choose your own adventure. It's really just following the different lines to get your messages out. And so using that and talking to our partners for how they share information, they generated this Plant Trees campaign. And so the messages that we thought were the most inspiring to get people excited about trees are listed here, but I think I'm going to show you the graphics themselves to get you more excited than the list. So for example, we have a graphic that says plant trees for shade and beauty. So it's just a reminder that, you know, if you're trying to do something to beautify your neighborhood or beautify your yard, don't forget to plant trees to be a part of that. Plant trees to strengthen communities. There's a lot of research that shows if neighborhoods have more trees, people are out and about more and interacting more. So you can build your community by planting more trees in it. Plant trees to improve health and well-being. Again, there's quite a lot of research about how trees are important for human health, whether it's reducing stress levels, reducing symptoms of ADD and depression and dementia, or even reducing human mortality from cardiovascular and pulmonary disease. So if you're worried about public health, plant a lot of trees. Similarly, plant trees to cool and save energy. The difference between the surface temperature in an area with lots of trees versus an area with almost no trees can be about 30 degrees Fahrenheit. So trees are powerhouses when it comes to cooling the area. And especially if you have one over your buildings, you're going to be reducing your energy costs. So plant trees to cool and save energy. Plant trees for clean air. Again, trees are great for collecting that particulate matter and improving air quality. We have plant trees for nature. Quite a few people out there, you know, they love seeing the birds in their yard. They love seeing the pollinators come through. Trees will bring that to your own home. And again, those benefits I mentioned to human health, if you even have a view of nature from your window, it reduces your stress, improves your work, sorry, what are the words? Your ability to work and get things done. So, you know, telling your clients or sharing this image with them to plant trees for nature, you can bring nature right outside your window, get that view and get those benefits. And finally, we also have plant trees to help manage stormwater. So quite a few people have to deal with flooding on a regular basis, and that happens on a community scale as well. So if you have clients who are just so frustrated with flooded basements, you can share this graphic with them.
Melissa?
So I mentioned, oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry, can I just, would you back up one just for a second? I just wanted to point out that there's a blank on all of these slides or all these information pieces for you to put your logo in. So communities can put their logo in. Whoever's sending this information out can put their logo in on this page, as well as links for your website to get information to draw back to you. So thank you. Sorry, Melissa.
Oh, no, thank you, Lydia. I was definitely going to forget that. All right, so I have mentioned a few times that this is something that you can share with your audience. So I wanted to let you know that these graphics were designed with partners in mind. So it's not to be shared from just the CRTI social media accounts, but for all of you who are interested, you can share these in your e-newsletters or on social media. And we have a whole toolkit that is designed to help you with that. So it includes links to those graphics or where you can find them, but it also has guidelines and sample messages that you can include with it. It has links to websites that you can share with your partners. And it just, it's a very thorough toolkit so that you can take these graphics and incorporate it into your own communication strategy. But I do want to say that this is officially launching on April 1st. So if you would like a copy of the toolkit, please reach out to me. I'm happy to share it with you. But do not release any of this information until April 1st. It'll have a much bigger impact if we're all sharing it at the same time. And requesting the toolkit does not mean you're committing to it. So maybe you want to look through it and see if you can handle that, you know, including it in your messages. And you also don't have to use every single graphic. So if there's one that really relates to your personal mission and goals, you can use that graphic. So yes, please let me know if you'd be interested in getting a copy of that toolkit. Yes. All right, and so the third strategy that I mentioned was to shape a partner launch. And this is really building awareness and getting getting people around the region to know that Chicago Region Trees Initiative exists. So one of our big pushes for this right now is something called Plant Trees for Communities. This is a goal that in 2021, we'll get 1 tree planted in every Chicago ward and in every municipality in the region. So that's 290 municipalities and 50 wards. So overall, this is 340 trees that we're trying to get planted, 1 in each of these communities. So it's a big push, and it'll be an interesting logistical thing, but we've had some really great responses so far. Lydia has reached out to the aldermen of each of the wards and to representatives in each municipality. And so far, the responses have been very supportive and very positive, with one of the surprises being that we were hoping to get a lot of it done in spring. But the people who have responded so far have been excited and want to get their communities involved. They want to bring residents to the planting to make a big deal of this planting. And so because of COVID, they just want to be cautious and have it in fall instead of spring. So that's really great news, because it's not just, sure, we'll take a tree, but this is a great idea. We think our community would love this. It's a good healing moment. So we are excited about that. And if we can get everybody to plant a tree, it'll look like this. We have been offering support to those communities that don't have the resources to pay for their own trees. But quite a few communities have also committed to providing their own tree. So that's also a good note. Although if any of you are interested in supporting some of the more under-resourced communities, we are trying to connect people to support that, but it should be a great event. Sorry, a great year of events. This is a lot of trees and a lot of individual events. And with that, I'm going to hand it off to Trinity. She's our stewardship coordinator.
Thanks, Melissa. So 2020 was an incredibly busy planting year for us, and this is just a showcase of 938 of those trees. As you can see, the communities with the stars, those were volunteer residential plantings, and last fall alone, we planted 500 trees with volunteers and residents. Not only does this map not show the full 7-county region we work in, it also doesn't include all our partners' plantings. We're compiling that data now. But this 500 trees number, which is incredible, is indicative of the ever-increasing motivation we're seeing coming from the residential sector, coming from local community organizations who see the need and want to help enrich the urban forest. I'd like to highlight in Aurora, for instance, we were able to partner with Dream Build Play Experience, a wonderful nonprofit focused on revamping traditional playgrounds to make them accessible to all children. So as you can imagine, how exciting to be able to see the new playground. Any kid can enjoy it, and we're able to work on the perimeter to increase species diversity, get some shade, as well as just enrich the whole area. I think the big fall planting season last year was also made possible only because we were able to rely on so many of you for our smaller tree sources. The high quality we're seeing, the ever increasing species diversity makes all the difference as more and more residents, across just even having tea or in meetings, I'm hearing more about, what about persimmon or other trees beyond the wonderful maples? We're seeing people interested in more of a balance in our communities. So the fact that you have innovated, that you're looking at smaller container trees that work well with volunteers, like the root pouches, like the grow bags, like the root prune pots, wonderful the quality of root mass we're seeing. So a thanks to you and continued encouragement and appreciation that you are looking to keep diversifying. And we know that in part because of the pandemic, that sense of powerlessness, that so many people were stuck at home. I'm curious if your nurseries garden centers saw more interest in do-it-yourself projects, in finding plant material that had a local resonance, because we're seeing this motivation not dissipating at all moving into 2021. More folks realizing, why wouldn't I want to better my community? You can move to the next slide. So one other exciting initiative coming up this spring is that we're partnering with Curio XYZ, which has an existing global tree recording app. You can access it via smartphone or online. And this is just an accessible, user-friendly mapping resource for the general public, for our partners to be able to record trees, and then we can start to get a sense for how efficiently we are making progress on our goals. As you can see here, this is just an example out of Colorado where we have the species. Also, if you were able to explore, you'd see that DBH and other critical factors are recorded so that we can link to iTree and anyone can see the ecosystem services, see the benefits that Melissa was sharing in action. What's also neat about Curio XY is that there's a celebration of the anecdotal. There's a story section where it isn't just about DBH, as important as that is. It's also about, how do you feel about this tree? What's the heritage? What's the importance in the community? So we appreciate that there can be that well-rounded valuation of trees. So something that we're very excited about as well is recording existing trees, recording new trees, but also recording where trees could be planted. And that taps into that building motivation I'm seeing all around our communities, our partners. They want to get involved. Well, maybe they don't have the space to plant a tree on their own site. Maybe they're focused on a community garden, or maybe there's a park road they go by every day on their way to work or walking in their neighborhood. There is a way with this app to kind of snapshot, and then we can try and work with them to get a planting going. Next slide, please. So the question then is, in part, what resources and information can we provide you for your customers, knowing that motivation is ripe to meet and encourage more of? I know Kellie's going to cover the gardenillinois.com plant finder a little later in the slides, and we just think it'd be a wonderful partnership opportunity to link directly to that from the tree app. So often we'll have our partners or volunteers at a planting, they're jazzed. They get it, they're so excited. What's the next step for them? Oftentimes they'll say, well, where can I get more trees? I would like to plant a tree. And for many, they're not familiar with the outpouring of community science initiatives in our area, or they're not as familiar with natural resource restoration. They may know of a native plant sale that comes around once a year, which can be a great resource, but maybe they're not aware of your local nursery or garden center, which is very close by. So it seems to make sense. It'd be so exciting if I could say, check out this with one click, so easy. You can then find these catalogs of these wonderful tree plant inventories, because it's not just trees they're excited about. They might say, well, I'm actually working on an area that's perpetually wet, but there's not enough space for trees, or I'd like more of a shrub hedge. Yes, I would like to be able to point them to your high quality local inventories of not just trees, but shrubs, forbs, and grasses. So the question is, seems like the tree app does make sense to connect, but how can we support your work in other ways through the tree app? What barriers are you finding to getting new customers? What keeps customers coming back? And any other suggestions? Please feel free to add these to the comment section or during the Q&A, but it seems like an opportunity to seize this excitement that we're seeing more of.
Thanks, Trinity. So now is this fun part, because I'm sure you're all extremely inspired right now and just eager to get involved. So the next few slides are just, what are ways that you can be involved with the CRTI efforts? So first, very simply, we have fantastic printed resources. So if you want to have a stack of them to offer to your customers, if you have a retail center, perhaps just have it on your counter. The Healthy Hedges pieces, a couple of them have been made into posters, so you can have them up on your wall where you meet with customers or in your retail area. We have lots of these things. So if any of it appeals to you, go ahead and reach out to us. If you're curious what else we have, you can email me and I'm happy to get that information to you. If you want to be more actively involved in that, we also have work groups that tackle different challenges in the Chicago region. That's the 7-county region. So we have our Trees and Green Infrastructure work group. They focus on policy issues and oak ecosystem restoration. We have our tree stewardship and planting work group, which does a lot of professional development and efforts relating to tree planting and stewardships and standards for those things. We have our tree risk assessment and management work group. They are focused on identifying and reducing the risks to trees and from trees, whether that's through education and training or creating resources that can help communities get more investment into those aspects. We have our forest composition work group. They are focused on collecting and analyzing data, and this is the science that is the foundation for all of the work that we do. And it also helps us track what our impact is over time. And finally, we have a communications and outreach advisory group. So that's the team that did all of the background research and the development of those great graphics and come up with our strategies for how we can get the word out most effectively. If you're interested in any of these groups, or if you just want to talk more about what they do or how much of a commitment it is, for most of them, it's a time commitment of meeting once a quarter or once a quarter, sometimes having more frequent calls when there's a specific project that you are working on. But really what's critical is that we have more industry perspective on each of these work groups. So ultimately, these groups are given a set of challenges to overcome, and then they decide what might be a good solution for that. But if we don't have the industry perspective influencing those decisions, we might be missing out on a really valuable facet of what is happening. So even if you can only go to 1 meeting a year, 2 meetings a year, or if you just review the minutes and give us feedback, we really value your perspective on this. So please reach out to me, to Kelly, to Lydia, to Trinity, any of us, and we'll make sure that you are connected if you think there's a way that you get involved in those. And finally, this is sort of a laundry list of just more things along the way you can do. So maybe you're more interested in doing like a project rather than helping on a regular basis. Well, reach out to your local municipality or park district, and maybe there's a way for you to coordinate a commemorative tree planting and help them with the social media and the traditional media surrounding that event. It's a good way to get your name out there for showing the good that you're doing, but also get trees planted. Certainly, if you are interested in the Plant Trees digital content, let us know. We're happy to share that toolkit with you. If it seems popular and people are using it and the audience is engaging with it, there's a good chance that we will create more graphics to go with the series. Anything that you do related to trees, if it's a tree planting event or education event, if you're sharing on social media, please feel free to tag Chicago Region Trees Initiative. We are on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, and on all of those, our handle is @ChicagoRTI. Finally, we didn't talk about Oaktober much here, but in the state of Illinois, it has been proclaimed by the governor that every October is Oaktober, Oak Awareness Month. And honestly, we really stretch that into September and November because we just love oaks so much. But if you have an event, whether it's a webinar or seminar, or if you are having a deal on a discount on oaks, or if you're supporting a native plant sale, anything you're doing related to oaks, please do share that information with us. And we're happy to share it to promote your events as well. We can cross promote it. And finally, we have an events page on our website, chicagorti.org/events. It's also in the chat. You can have any of your tree-related events put on our events calendar. So go ahead and fill it out. It's a very simple form. And once you fill out the form, I get an email and I just have to approve it. There's space for you to put a picture, which can be your logo or anything else you'd like. And so, yeah, if you're having any kind of tree-related event, please put it on our events page. We're happy to promote that for you. And with that, I'm going to hand it off to Kelly.
Thank you so much, Melissa. So I know she just shared a lot of great information about how you can specifically get your team involved, and we're going to make sure you have those actionable items in a follow-up email. It's going to come from info@illinoisgreen.net. So you'll want to make sure that if you don't get that, probably tomorrow, that you check your junk folder, your spam folder. I'll also be sure that the 3 presenters, that their contact information is shared, just in case you have questions. But you can filter that through me too, so you can always contact me because I do sit on work groups and the Executive Advisory Council for this project. I want to finish up with something specific that Trinity hit on, and I think Melissa hit on it also, and it's kind of wrapping up how we can specifically link consumers from the consumer awareness campaign and also our wholesale customers back to you guys. And all of these things are kind of culminating at a really good time, I feel like. Last April, we had the opportunity to apply for a specialty crop grant. And it's been bothering me for a while in my job because I find that while we do have a consumer-facing website called gardenillinois.com that has had a member locator on it for a while, there's a missing piece. I get calls from municipalities and from wholesale buyers that ask me, how can I find this size tree or this species of tree? I get calls from customers even that will ask me how to find specific plants. I also get highly irritated every time I see in the garden groups and the different consumer-facing groups I belong to on social media that people are buying plants on Etsy and on Amazon. It drives me crazy. But there's nothing we can do about it. We know the rules of the game. Now we have to compete. We have to put ourselves in the game. And I can get specialty crop grant money to promote our entire organization and the plants in Illinois and drive that traffic to you. So that's what we're going to do with this grant. And it's lining up really well with the CRTI project and the fact that in spring, they're going to start this consumer awareness campaign. So what we're going to do with the grant is in 2 phases. Essentially, we're going to redesign the gardenillinois.com site. So if you go to it today, you'll see that it is outdated. The last time we redesigned it was in 2015. But we're going to give it a whole new look and feel. It's going to be very well timed with all the new research and information that we've gathered about the physical and mental well-being or benefits of planting and getting outside and putting more green things in the ground. Along with that, we're going to link the site to a plant finder. So it will allow us to do social and digital outreach that can talk about specific plants. We can do tree campaigns. We can align with CRTI. When it comes to directing people to things that may have less invasive tendencies, or even when we're talking about plant shortages and possible substitutions, we can specifically link to this plant finder that is connected to our members and the catalog offering that they have. It's not going to be a real-time inventory tool. We all know that's not possible. But the idea is driving them specifically to your website, where then you have a more specific offering, because I know you've all been working hard on that in the last year and even longer for some of you. So the first year is going to be focused on our retail audience to help our garden centers and our retail greenhouses. And then later in 2021, we're going to get our wholesale growers involved in the campaign. And the linchpin of it is that those grant dollars are going to allow us to spend social media and digital advertising dollars to drive people to you. So I'm really excited to share more with you. We don't have time to do that today. So keep an eye out for another virtual meeting invitation that's going to come in February on how you can all get involved. And in the meantime, if you don't have a plant catalog list in Excel or some other electronic form, I would encourage you to start working on that. So now we're going to open it up for questions. I think if you want to unmute and you want to speak out loud to our presenters, we'd be happy to allow that. We need to do that kind of one at a time. If you do have questions in chat, you can type them in also. But we'll go ahead and open it up if anybody wants to speak.
And Kelly, would you like me to stop sharing so we can see all of our faces?
That's an awesome idea. Is there anyone that would like to share? Vanessa, can you unmute yourself? Oh, okay,
There we
go
go.
ahead.
Does that work?
Yes.
Okay. So my question is, the contract growing, how did you decide on that? And is that something that went out for bid? And how do we as wholesalers like better accommodate that?
So we had, we invited all of the IGIA members to participate in several contract growing workshops to discuss content of the contract. And we met over the course of almost 2 years, I think. We had probably 3 or 4 meetings during that period of time, refining the contract. And then once the contract was refined, we put out a bid, and I also sent that out through IGIA. Kellie sent that out to your membership as well to get input for potential folks to bid on that contract. We only had 4 bidders on the contract. I was disappointed that we didn't have more, but I also figured it was our first time doing it, so that might be part of it. And then we ended up selecting 2 contractors that we bid the contract through. So that's sort of the history on that.
Thanks, Vanessa. Anybody else?
I have a question. Hi, everybody. Melissa, Trinity, Lydia, do you all envision planting the same sort of size of tree throughout this entire the entire scope of the project, kind of that volunteer style planting, or is there room for smaller, bigger?
Well, I'm sorry. Who was talking? Was that Trinity? Did you jump in?
Okay. For the volunteer plantings, yes. The one happy medium seems to be the 15-gallon, and we experimented with 25-gallon, and that did work. Though I did mention, I did not share our partner plantings, which often case will involve municipalities, where it's public works or it's contractors doing that planting, and that's B&B still. But for the volunteers, for them to feel that sense of ownership, for them to be able to use hand tools to plant 20+ trees in a good hour and a half, 2 hours, feel that accomplishment, it is the smaller container trees. We have done some seedlings, especially through MWRD's Oak Seedling, their Restore the Canopy program. We just kind of have that heavy disclaimer of it can be pretty tough for folks to get survivability of seedling saplings. But we still do that in certain campaigns, especially with the tree app now that you can record anything. So just keeping them inspired, encouraged. But the bulk of what we're seeing more and more interest in is the containerized 15 and 25-gallon.
Thanks.
Thanks, Trinity. Lydia, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, I was just going to, one of the challenges that we see, we are big proponents of our urban forestry partners that are municipalities and continuing to do their work. And we know that those are larger sized trees with almost exception. I can think of only a handful that wouldn't be planting the larger sized trees. The survival rate on those that are 2.5 inches in diameter is good. It seems to be a manageable size for them to do, and it's also a size that's not commonly prone to vandalism, which is really important. One of the challenges that we're seeing is that, and this happened in 2008 with the recession tanking, and then again now with COVID coming in, that when municipalities have to hunker down with their budgets, one of the first things to go is forestry dollars. And so we're trying to explore and identify ways that we can do financing mechanisms for urban forestry for communities that's not so vulnerable to challenges with their budgets. So for instance, one of the things that we've pushed all years is trees as infrastructure, and the need to get trees out of the operating budget and putting them into the capital budget so they're managed like any of the other infrastructure that the community has, whether it be their streets and water lines or storm sewers or those kinds of things. We want to see trees moved into this capital category because they plan for that budget over to a 5 to 10 year period, where with the operating budget, it's a year-to-year basis typically. The other thing that we've talked about is alternative funding mechanisms. So for instance, the city of Madison, Wisconsin has a tax that they instituted. It's a very small tax. It's like less than $10 a year, I think she told us, per household, that they instituted when EAB became a challenge, and it was their way of trying to keep up with EAB replacement and removals. And since they've completed that, they've decided to keep that tax in place. The residents there don't mind it. It's a small investment for them, and that funds their urban forestry program, which is a steady stream of revenue. It's not tied to sales taxes and some of those things that they would typically see, and it's a set percentage of the overall sales tax. So there would be a minor dip in some instances, but overall it's not to the whim of decision makers or at budget time. The other is, this carbon credit program, where if we can get communities to automatically record their trees when they go in the ground and then track them, there's an anticipated mortality rate on urban trees that's built into the model, so that they don't have to be concerned if they have a tree, die, that they anticipate a certain amount of mortality. But if we can get them to track their trees and manage it as, infrastructure again, but where they can monetize that investment and get that to come back to them in revenue stream through the selling of the tax credits, or I'm sorry, the carbon credits, that's another avenue that they consider. So it's something that we're continuing to explore. We're looking across national and international models to see how urban forestry is funded in order to sort of stabilize tree planting budgets so that we're not constantly seeing this fluctuation take place. When we had a couple of workshops, webinars on impacts of COVID to tree planting in the fall, and I've lost my train of thought here. There were several people that were from across the country that tuned in to hear that. And one of the things that we heard over and over again was that, that they had experienced this setback in 2008, and it had taken them almost till 2020 to get back up to their regular funding that they were by 2008. And then COVID hit. So now they're seeing this return back to these lower levels of funding, and we don't want that to continue.
Thanks, Lydia. Any other questions or comments? We have time for a couple more. Lori, do you want to say something? I think you're on mute. You're on mute.
That better?
Yes, ma'am.
As Lydia was talking about some of the trees that die, that kind of reminded me of some discussions that I think have been happening with some of the work groups in the past, or that have come up otherwise, about once the effort starts going more toward homeowners, if there's things in place or ways to help get them to plant trees correctly as well as maintain them, so that they have a positive experience and their trees live and they have there's a pretty good success rate. So kind of going on down the road in the with the homeowners, is anything more been done with that in terms of especially the maintenance, I guess, to make sure that the trees are going to live?
Trinity, do you want to talk a little bit about what you've been doing with your volunteers?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that's a great point to make. And we've learned that it's not as simple as just planting and leaving. Proper planting technique, including exposing that root flare, and just even introducing the term of root flare, that we've learned that so many trees have been planted too deeply in the past. And then also the issue of mulch, that volcano mulch. And it's encouraging that some of these things, once you see them, you can't unsee them. But it's almost also that kind of public education campaign as well, that those volunteers can then become advocates for trees as well, even just in their neighborhoods or where they work. So, but it's an ongoing thing, because as you know, such a high percentage of trees do have the volcano mulch, where they are buried, planted too deeply, to the point where they are essentially buried. So some of the materials Melissa showcased really help us. There's a door hanger, English, Spanish, that showcases just how important it is, given all the urban ills, all the difficulties trees have to deal with: road salt, urban heat island, compaction. So if you have any ideas on that for communicating that message, even co-hosting presentations Or how can we get the word out, not just to our planting partners who may already, they get it, they know why it's important, but also kind of the general public who are just getting interested, and how can we help them spread the word about proper planting as well.
So just to add to, I'm sorry, Lori, I was just going to add a couple of things that we have that Trinity's also developed, is that we've developed a watering bucket that has an explanation about, you know, how many 5-gallon water buckets it takes to water a tree appropriately. And those instructions are in English and Spanish. I believe it includes mulching instructions as well. And then the U.S. Forest Service has a guide on the tree owner's manual, is what it's called. And we've printed that in both English and Spanish. And we hand those out to landowners when tree planting is undertaken. And then once the tree plantings have taken place, Trinity follows up with an email that has some educational materials, but it also has an infographic that we developed on watering. So it's just a reminder. So throughout the summer months when it's dry, she'll shoot an email out with this logo, this watering logo that's just an image of a watering can, or I can't remember, it's a hose watering a tree. We can share it with you if you're interested, and you're welcome to share it with any of your customers as well. That reminds people that it's time to water their trees.
I think one piece of this that's so important, and why we needed you guys on this call, and why we need to loop in our retail partners, is that there is no huge there's no $1 million budget for advertising on this, and any grant dollars that are achieved through this project are going to go for trees, not for hiring a huge marketing agency or things like that. And so that's why that digital marketing campaign that we talked about, and the partner toolkit with social media that we'll be sharing. And we have to be so careful with how we do it, because we don't want someone to accidentally release the materials before April. But you guys are all our arms and legs, if you will, in each community. And even if you're a wholesale grower, you have an audience that follows you on social, and you have customers that speak to the homeowner and the private landowner. And so we all have to work together to communicate those messages about proper maintenance, proper tree planting, all those things. And so I think that's critical.
And just to add a little bit more, because you were speaking specifically about the homeowner audience as we're expanding that, Lori, is that the Plant Trees Toolkit does include links to resources that you can share, which include things like how to plant a tree and how to care for a tree. And we do have that on our website, and it's part of all of our pushes.
And there's some stuff that Kelly can probably put on the Garden Illinois website as well, because the garden centers would have contact with a lot of homeowners, I would think, as well.
It would be wonderful if any of you have just a little bit of time to look at the resources section on the CRTI website and let us know of resources that we don't currently have that you're aware of, that we can link, send on to people, and then also link them back to resources that are important that you would like them to know about. Our goal is to get partners' resources on that site.
And on a related note, the IGIA Board of Directors has charged the Growers Committee with taking another look at the tree planting guidelines that were put together back in 2009 that will help. That's something that the Tree Planting and Stewardship Work Group, I believe, I may have said the wrong work group, that's part of this initiative, has looked to for informing tree planting, proper tree planting. And so that would be something that would be used for, sending out to foresters and contractors and anyone that's planting. And so that's work that needs to be done in 2021. Anyone on this call could be part of that if they wanted to. Okay, so we are just a little bit over an hour. Are there any other comments or questions before we wrap up? Okay, I am not seeing any. This is the first really big virtual meeting we've ever hosted, and I think it was a success. I feel really excited. I want to thank our presenters. Gosh, you guys crammed so much really good information into a very short time. It was so It was helpful to me, hopefully to everyone that participated. I'm going to share the recording and all the great resources in a follow-up email. And if you have anything that you need afterwards, you know where to find me. And have a good rest of your day, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.